To take this story forward, I'm joined by two well-known economists, Madan Sabnavis and K Joshi. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining in. Madan, I'm going to start with you. We understand a national common market for agricultural commodities is being proposed by the government. Do you think that's a step in the right direction? Would it address the issue of food supply?
No, in fact, a national common market makes a lot of sense in India, but I think the logistics of creating it is a major issue. Because the moment I'm going to have a national common market, I would necessarily have to have electronic trading taking place throughout the country. And presently, we do not have this kind of an infrastructure. That's point one. Point two is that even in case we do have this market, how do we really provide access to the farmers? How do we educate them that there is a national common market and you need to come out here and trade? So, to my mind, while it's a very good idea, something which we'll have to work on, but really getting it into action is going to take a long time, because we have seen that even when the APMC laws have been changed in certain states, farmers still continue to follow the Aditya mode of coming through the intermediaries, primarily because there are no options which are there.
K Joshi, you know, the new law we understand is likely to override the APMC laws. My question is slightly broader. Is there a need for a national common market, or are we better off with more effective execution and implementation of existing state laws?
No, I think the laws need to be changed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, for instance, take the case of APMC Act. It was designed to benefit the farmers, but actually it is now being manipulated by middlemen, and I think it's adding further layer to the costs and is responsible for at times for high inflation, and particularly in fruits and vegetables. So I think some of the laws need to be changed, but I think, as Madan was pointing out, I think I agree with him that there will be, first of all, you'll have to address the issue of information asymmetry. I mean, how do you make information available to everybody so that people benefit out of it, and that requires significant investment. Then there are issues, I mean, you had raised a broader issue of agriculture supply. Markets are only one component of it. I think you need to improve agriculture production efficiency. I think all those things still hold. You need better storage, you need better logistics. I think all those things also go along with the establishment of the market.
The new law, we understand, Madan, is that also talks about multiple spot exchanges. You know, we've spoken about this in the past. The governments in the past have different views on how spot exchanges need to be functioned and so on. Where, to your mind, is the lacuna? Is it about regulation, or is it about infrastructure issues?
No, I think it's more in terms of infrastructure issues, the case of access. I always say that access is most important. Like we already have a futures trading taking place in agricultural commodities. But if you ask a question about how many farmers are really taking part, it's very small, because farmers really don't have access. We'll again have to go through middlemen to reach it. And then, of course, the major problem which we have here is warehousing. Because the moment I have a spot exchange or I have a national commodity market, ultimately I need to have enough warehouses so that goods can actually be stocked there. You're quite sure that they exist, the quality is ascertained, and then you're able to sell the commodity to the potential buyer. Now, we don't have this kind of a structure in place. So until we create this kind of an infrastructure, I don't think we'll be able to replace the traditional mode of marketing, which is through the Aditya and through the mandis.
K Joshi, where does the government start from? You know, many critics have argued or have been very critical about the role of the Food Corporation of India. Does that call for a complete overhaul, or do you think that the existing system needs to be tweaked to make it better?
Well, I think Food Corporation of India needs an overhaul. I think it has become the largest hoarder of food grains in the country, and I think if you look at the cereals, the rice and wheat which it is hoarding in large quantities, I think these, so there is enough supply in the economy, more than there is demand at this juncture, and you have excess stocks, yet the prices or the inflation in rice and wheat had stayed pretty high in the last couple of years. So clearly, I think the Food Corporation of India is not serving its purpose in terms of effective intervention in the market. So obviously, I think it requires an overhaul, and I think as Mr. Modi was also pointing out, I think sometimes it's better to build a new house than to repair the existing one.
That's exactly the point I want to ask, Madan. You know, is this about building a new house for the sake of building it? Because let's say another organization replaces the FCI. A, is it feasible? B, does this just call for better management and repairing it better rather than try and build a new one?
No, I think today the norm is that you want to create new organizations and change existing ones. People are talking of a planning commission. We're talking of restructuring taking place in the Reserve Bank. So I think it's the norm. But to be more serious, I think I think the ideology behind having any kind of food corporation of India is important. If we have the whole business of procurement and distribution, which is going to be channeled through a particular organization, we can call it the FCI or any other organization. As long as that remains, I think whatever problems which K Joshi spoke about will continue to exist. See, unless we're able to say that limit the amount of procurement which takes place or decentralize their distribution so that the FCI only looks after the strategic buffer and actually gets out of the business of procurement for the sake of distribution, only then will I think can we really think of reorganizing the FCI. Otherwise, just changing it by calling it a different organization, having a different set of personnel may not really serve the purpose.
Sure. One final question, gentlemen, and K Joshi, I want to start with you. The core of all of this is about inflation and about managing food prices. Do we need a slightly holistic policy instead of tweaking markets on one hand, tweaking supply on the other hand? Does it call for a slightly more holistic policy that sort of encompasses the issue of warehousing and price discovery and so on?
Well, I think you need a holistic policy, but if you look at food on inflation, I would like to divide it into three components. First is the cereals. Cereals, you have enough supply, but still food inflation remains high, and that is where inefficiency of FCI or mismanagement, whatever you might call it, comes into place. Then you have fruits and vegetables. I think where the warehousing, storage, etc. will play a very important role because this is a perishable, and that is where the APMC Act, etc. Abolishing them will also play an important role in ensuring that the price or price spikes, particularly in fruits and vegetables, remain under control. And there is a general tendency. I think there are multiple layers, as I was pointing out earlier, in the trading of agriculture commodities. I think that if that is delayered or reduced, I think that will help. So, and the third category in the food is the most persistent, which is the protein, where I think you need to focus on increasing the supply more than anything else. So I think if you focus on these three aspects, that will help you address the food inflation problem. But yeah, I think you need structures for implementing them. You definitely need efficient markets. You need better storage and so on and so forth. Only then I think the whole thing will tie up. But yeah, within the food, I think you need to be very specific. You need to understand the problem and then I think address it. And for instance, as I was saying, protein will require a specific focus on this category because the demand for proteins is only going to rise going ahead, and we have been persistently short of supply there. Whereas in fruits and vegetables, I think the growth in the production has been much faster. Yet I think the inflation has remained high because the wastages couldn't be controlled and the markets couldn't be made efficient.
Sure. But Madan, one area of concern in the past that's caused spiraling food inflation has also been the role of the middleman. Do you think that the new policy, whatever it is, will reduce the interference of the middleman, invariably a political sort of, a political middleman that sort of influences price decisions? Can a law or a policy fix that?
No, not really. I think until we create the structures where the farmer is able to interact with the ultimate buyer, I don't think it will be possible to eliminate the middleman. Now, see, what happens is that we normally tend to look at a middleman as somebody who just sort of extracts money from all corners and doesn't really add to the value chain. But to my mind, I think the middleman occupies a very important position because he really provides access between the buyer and the seller. I think that's what we need to appreciate. And because look at a farmer who's actually growing his crop in some interior of the country, and finally we're getting it in, say, in a city like Mumbai, it necessarily has to travel through 3 or 4 channels, and which necessarily means that there are margins being added at every particular stage.
Sure.
So unless we're able to cut it by means you have contract farming, corporate farming, or I would say even a crazier idea will be why not state farming?
Sure.
Because I think the state is something which could really afford most of what we're talking of and can build a kind of back-end infrastructure. I think the middleman continues to occupy an important space in Indian agriculture.
All right, Madan Sabnawis, K Joshi, we'll leave it there. Many thanks indeed for joining us with your perspective. That was the story of the Agri Market Reforms. But coming up next, the Planning Commission is on its way out, says Prime Minister Modi in his Independence Day address. How different will the new framework be? Former member of the Planning Commission, Arun Maira, will join us on the other side.